Where is a safe place to travel as a Black woman? Aren't you afraid of being human trafficked? Don't go there. It's not safe. I see comments like this on a daily basis. I've said numerous times that safety is an illusion. We, those of us that are women especially, aren't truly safe anywhere. But that's my opinion. I thought for the purpose of this video that I would reach out to a few other Black women travelers who visited a lot of countries that y'all consider to be dangerous and see what they had to say. But before we get into that, allow me to introduce myself to those of you that are new here. I'm Adelia Borachade. I'm founder of Picky Girls Travel Solo, a Facebook group for Black women solo travelers of all levels of experience. I am also the creator of the Financial Confidence Academy, where I help Black women master their money so that they can live life on their terms. On this channel, I share my experiences traveling the world, living abroad. So if you're into solo travel, expat life, or getting your FU money together, this is the place for you to be. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications.
Hi, I'm Patricia Ortega, and the dangerous country that I spent time in was Honduras. I was there for 2 years from July of 2015 through June of 2017. And I also brought my son. At the time he was 10. I thought it was a nice country. Now, did anyone caution me? I kind of had some prior experience in Honduras. I went there, let's see, maybe back in 2011, 2012, but I went to Roatan, the Bay Islands, for a vacation for about a week and a half with my son and my sister to visit my son's father. We never went to the mainland, but even then, you know, we heard about the bad things that goes on in the mainland, but that is where his father is from. I have known his father since 2001. So the bad information that I got from it was, of course, from the news, but a lot of it from his father, because his father was in the military and then he went into the police. So I kind of like heard the inside information of it, but nothing, you know, nothing too horrible. But when I told my parents that I was going to go teach in Honduras and I was bringing my son, that's when my mother started researching a whole lot of information about Honduras. I knew that she was going to find that at the time in 2015, it was considered the world's most dangerous country outside of a war zone. She gave me the stats on the number of dead bodies that they find in the morning, and that capital city Tegucigalpa was just, you know, horrible. Murders and homicides and robbings and killings and things. So she just did not want me to go, or she was like, I could go but leave my son, and I was just like, no, you know, we're going together. So I can say that her persuasion affected me just a little, but at the time I just left a charter school, and I had a bunch of interviews with public schools and nothing was biting, and I needed a job, and plus I wanted to go down there. And I'm like, okay, so I get international school experience. And it was just like, I'll take a chance and see what it's all about. If it's really that bad, you know, I have no problem turning around and coming home. I just thought, you know, not to say that it couldn't be that bad. I'm just like, you know, I live outside the city of Chicago in the north suburbs, and we hear about the killings that go on the south side and west side in Chicago. So it's in my mindset, it was like this: if you're looking for drugs or guns or trouble, you will find it. If that is not what you are looking for, then you can avoid all of those things. I know there are random killings where, it can just randomly happen and you're not looking for drugs, guns, or trouble. But that was pretty much of my mindset, that if you're not looking for those things, then you can avoid problems. Did I encounter any safety issues while in the country? Yes and no. I was told by some of the adults at the school and some of the kids not to go to El Centro. Those were where all the buses are, the city buses that you take, and they told me not to go there. But I'm in Honduras. I need to get around. I didn't have a car, and I was hearing, don't take taxis, don't take buses, and it was just like, I can't walk everywhere. I wasn't going to rent a car. So I just decided to go take a bus. And then when I went down there, a guy came up to me, and I thought he was admiring my handbag, but at the end of the interaction, my lazy Spanish, I finally realized he was asking me for my bag. And I walked away with that interaction and was like, oh, geez, he liked my bag, until I kept trying to remember the things that he was, dame tu bolsa, dame tu bolsa. And it was like, I finally figured out, give me your bag. And I'm like, woo, I walked away from that situation. I, walked away and I was like, thank you. Yes, my bag is cute. Thank you. And I walked away. And then when I was finally trying to understand his translation, I realized that I walked away from a holdup. But I kind of chalked it up to, okay, I had a bad experience. And although it was bad, I'm just like, okay, I really have to, get my Spanish together so I wouldn't encounter any of those things. But after that, most of my, I guess you could say negative encounters would have happened had I been in the United States. We had a flat tire and we had to figure out that situation when we went to the Copan Ruins. I was on a city bus and it broke down, and I was out in the middle of nowhere, and I had to try to figure out for me and my son to get back to the main road to catch another bus. So, I just kind of like followed everybody else and did what they did. But no, I'm like, nothing really bad, like like having anything stolen or anything like that. I didn't encounter that. I was told not to go into certain neighborhoods, especially the one that I live next to. I live next to San Miguel Colonia, and it was considered one of the 5 dangerous colonias in the city. And the school and where I lived was right next door to it. And, a lot of other rich neighborhoods were next door to it. So it's something that you can't get away from. But our teacher bus drove through there every day, and you start seeing the activities going on, and you're like, everybody's doing what everybody needs to do. So, if these people are getting on with their lives, I'm getting on with my life. What kind of activities did I do during my time there? We went to their version of the national parks or the national forest. It was El Tigre, and every time I had visitors to come, that was one of the places that we went to. They had hiking trails that you could see, waterfalls and stuff. That was one place. El Picacho, it's the statue of Jesus sitting on top of the city. It's a picture of Jesus looking down on the city. So that's the place that I took my friends and family to when they came to visit. Let's see, my sister came to visit, and we went out to Copan Ruins. We rented a car and drove across the country to the ruins. My other sister came to visit, and we went to I forgot the name of this place. It's like some lodge out in Lake Jojobo. There's this big freshwater lake out there, and we stayed at a cabin out there, and we went hiking around there. That's very beautiful. We also went to I'm gonna get this wrong, Potahonzak waterfalls. So I also did that when one of my sisters came out, and I did it also with a couple of teacher friends. We did that, and then let's see, I visited Nicaragua next door, El Salvador next door, Guatemala. Me and my son took the bus and we went to the beaches. We went to La Ceiba, Trujillo, Tela, for all of the holidays. So we did a lot of traveling in the country. So that was nice. It shows you that Honduras was just a very beautiful country, and if the reputation that they have is, if it wasn't so dire, I mean, this place could get a lot of tourism because they have a lot of things to offer. Do I think the status as a tourist or a resident made a difference? Yes. Now, when I was down there and I became a resident, yeah, my Spanish was not great at all. I had some Hondurans that mistaken me as a Garifuna. Then once they heard my Spanish was not good, then they kind of recognized I was American. And a lot of places recognized that I was an American. And of course, my treatment was a whole lot better. Of course, being a Black American, and I guess you can say, I guess they're used to seeing white Americans and they come down there as missionaries, but then see a Black American come down there, and in their eyes, having a little money, it was a new experience for them. And my treatment was, it was great. Now, when I went there as a tourist, back in 2011, 2012, I was just a tourist. They're used to that. But when I was down there living and working as a school teacher, I started to notice that my treatment was a lot better, especially a lot better than the Garifunos. Those are the Black people of the country. I noticed that I was treated a whole lot better than them. Would I return? I did return. The next summer I returned to get my bags, but I did return. My son has made some good friends. He wanted to return in the summer of 2020, but of course, COVID, so we don't know when we're able to get back down. His father wants to see him, and plus he wants to see his schoolmates that he made these friendship with, and plus I would like to go down there too. It was two years of my life down there. Although that the election violence got really bad after we left, the country seems to have calmed down. I'm still not scared to go down there. I still have some U.S. school teachers along with Honduran school teachers that I still keep in contact with, and some of my students. So I'm not scared to go back down there to go visit. And even like when I retire, I'm trying to convince my partner that we should buy property in the north coast of Honduras, or Nicaragua or Costa Rica. But if you know what to look for and know what to avoid, I think you can have a pretty decent time down there and a decent living.
Hi, I'm Ivana Robinson, a life and leadership coach, and I live in Mexico City. I visited Mexico City for the first time in 2015. I came down with 2 girlfriends to celebrate my birthday. At that point, no one really said anything to me about Mexico being, quote unquote dangerous. I was a pretty well-seasoned traveler at that point. I traveled solo a lot, so I think people kind of knew I was going regardless. But it was more things in the form of a question of, isn't it so dangerous there? Don't people get kidnapped? What about the drug cartels? One of the young women that I visited with actually had someone say to her, I hope you come back. It would be really sad if you didn't come back in a very serious manner. In terms of how those warnings, the media affected me, they didn't really, change my planning. To me, I am traveling to a major city. At the time I lived in Washington, D.C. So the way in which I kind of conduct myself is not going to be any different, right? I'm going to pay attention to my surroundings, try and explore mostly during the daytime, stay around areas that have a lot of people, things like that. I wouldn't say that it really changed or impacted my planning at all, just because I think if you've been to one major city, you can go to another major city without too much of an issue. Did I encounter any safety issues while in the country? No. Nothing really happened untoward while we were in the country. I actually fell in love with Mexico and Mexico City specifically. I will say there were certain instances where, a taxi driver might drop us off someplace and would kind of reiterate, be very careful in this area, stay together, things like that. But I find that when you are women in the world without a man, that people tend to err on the side to give you that type of advice, as if, you don't live every day as a woman in the world. So I didn't really, there were nothing that really happened. I will say that, I, as a Black woman, my friends who came with me, one was Indian, one was white. So the combination of us together definitely stood out. Mexico City also is not as much of a tourist destination as it is now. So people were more interested. They were more curious. We definitely got a lot of attention, but at no point would I say that any of it was negative or untoward or a problem that we experienced. What did we do while we were here? Mexico City is a gigantic city full of people and culture and food and experiences. We went to many museums, and learned, about the anthropology of Mexico. Templo Mayor has, some of the old ruins from the pre-colonial city. We get to stand there and you get to see, the pre-colonial structures that were built during colonialism, as well as modern architecture. And I don't know many other places I can think of where from one single spot you can see so much of a city's history and growth the way that you can in downtown Mexico City. There's also, La Casa Azul, which is Frida Kahlo's former home and is now a studio and is now a museum that we got to visit and learn more about her and her work and her life here in Mexico. Teotihuacan, which are the ruins just outside the city, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Moon. I'm sure many of you have seen pictures of, and we got to climb those, and that was a beautiful experience. And then for my birthday, we, went out to a wonderful restaurant here in Mexico City, because there are so many. You almost never need to go to any place twice because there's always something new to try. Across the spectrum, high end, low end, you can find food that you like and have an interesting experience for sure. And then Xochimilco, which is a canal maybe about an hour outside the city, where you get to hire essentially a gondola, if you will, to take you down the canal, and you can buy food and drinks and hire mariachi to sing to you, and it's just a fun hangout that is very common here in the city. Do I think my status as a tourist or resident made a difference in my experience? So, having been here both as a tourist and a resident, I would not say that I've had a super different experience. I would say that there are not a huge amount of Black Americans in Mexico City, the neighborhood I live in specifically. So I do get a fair amount of attention, like people notice me, but it's always been out of a genuine curiosity or interest. I obviously get to make stronger connections with my neighbors or with people within the community because I get to frequent businesses as opposed to being a tourist. Either way, people know I'm not from here, so I think the difference doesn't really happen in terms of being a tourist or a resident for me personally. Would I return? I live here now. Before I moved here, I had visited maybe 3 or 4 times and just fell more and more in love with it every time. You know, like I said, it is a city full of culture and great food and wonderful people. I have always felt very warmly welcomed here. Any interactions I've had, for the most part, have been very positive, have been people who just want to know more, you know, getting a different perspective on the people who come here and who visit and who decide to make their home here, and just being able to relate to people on that level is something that I do not experience everywhere, even while I've traveled in many places. And Mexico City is just probably my favorite place that I've ever been. So I feel very fortunate to be able to make my home here.
Hi, I'm Sharita, and I've been a digital nomad for about 4 years. And I actually started my digital nomad journey living abroad in Medellin, Colombia. And yes, I heard every story in the book about how dangerous the country was before I moved there. Um, I think my family, especially the older generation, they had seen Colombia in the news from the 80s, 90s, and even the 2000s. And even though I hadn't seen that firsthand, I definitely knew that it was supposedly a dangerous place and that I needed to be very cautious. But in my research, I saw that there was a big expat community and so many people were thriving. So it was like, it must not be that bad. But, I was expecting to see guns on the street and just, shootings and drugs on every corner. The warnings did impact how I went about moving to Colombia, because unlike any other city that I've lived in, I actually did visit Medellin, just because I needed to make sure that those rumors weren't true. So I visited a few months before I made my move, and I spent about a week in Medellin, and it was just completely the opposite of what I was expecting. I knew it was a nice city based on like blogs and YouTube, but I just, because of all the warnings, I just wasn't expecting it to be this very, very advanced modern city with like luxurious malls and just opulent restaurants and cafes. And it completely exceeded my expectations because the bar had been set so low. And I had been so scared to move there and scared of what I was going to see. But even at nighttime, I felt completely safe. I'd see people out and about, into the night. Of course, there's places that I might avoid as a solo female traveler at night, but otherwise I felt completely safe. And the only thing I was really worried about was like pickpockets and people taking my laptop, which I had heard there had been some like armed robberies especially with digital nomads who had their laptops out at certain cafes. So I did learn to take some precautions. But otherwise, for the most part, I felt very safe and a lot safer than I felt where I was moving from, which was Washington, D.C., where there were literal drive-bys in my neighborhood and, all actual drug dealings right around the corner. And I lived in a nice neighborhood. So I'm not sure what everyone was worried about, especially as an American. But yeah, Colombia very much surprised me in how safe I felt for the most part. And just how different it was from all the rumors I'd heard. So I never encountered any safety issues in Medellin. I will say that I have male friends who did have some run-ins with like armed robberies. And mainly it's because we have cell phones and we have laptops. And cell phones are very valuable. And we're living in a third world country. So my cell phone is worth $1,000, and to someone in Colombia, like that 1,000 USD can go really far. Not that I'm welcoming people to take my phone or take my friends' phones, but I understand the risk because of that difference in the economies, and therefore I do have male friends who might have had something stolen, but no one was ever hurt, which is the big difference between most places in the United States. Like if anything goes down in the United States, if someone has a gun, they're probably using it, which is crazy. And I think that in Medellin, it's more of just a threatening tactic. And I'm saying, I know like several hundred people. And then like, I think I know 3 people in Medellin, Americans, who were robbed for like a cell phone. So it's rare, but it is something that I was cautious about. So I didn't usually sit outside with my laptop at cafes, or I would sit in the back patio. And I'd only go places where there were other people with that kind of technology, so I wouldn't be the only one and it wouldn't stand out. And they have a phrase in Medellin that says "no dar la papaya," which is like, don't just make things easy. Don't leave your cell phone or your bag just sitting on the table, because someone will take it. It's not one of those cities where you can just be like completely free with your things. But other than that, I felt completely safe and didn't really have to take extra precautions. So during my time in Medellin, I was there for the first time I lived there for 6 months, and the second time for about 5 months. And I did everything you can imagine. I went hiking. I did like, what is it called? Balloon soccer. Like I do a lot of random things with friends. There's activities like bowling, roller skating, just kind of blew up in Colombia as well. I go on road trips and do like horseback riding, and then my day-to-day is just going to cafes, sometimes going to happy hour. I joined a gym. And, I just did the things that regular people do. So Colombia is definitely full of the normal activities. The only thing I would say is, as a person who likes to hike, the one drawback to Colombia is that, or in Medellin specifically, it's surrounded by mountains. So there's tons of trails. It's a really great place for beautiful hikes. However, when you get more into the mountains, you get a little bit more remote, meaning you lose cell phone service, and there are people with a lot less money, and sometimes there are people who do want to take advantage of tourists who are on those hikes. So the only safety precaution I would have to take that kind of stopped me from doing things is that I wouldn't be able to go on those hikes by myself. There are some parks that kind of have remote areas because everything kind of goes up into the mountains, and they would always advise that if you're a woman traveling alone, you probably don't want to go like without a big dog or without other people. So there were times where I would be like dissuaded from going to, certain parks and things because it might be unsafe, because things can be really empty. Like especially some of these parks, if you climb some of the higher sections, it could just be you and like a few people. And of course that's never safe. So that's kind of something like one drawback, but it comes with the territory. It's a beautiful place. They're still building up their economy. So that's going to be a risk. So my status as a tourist in Medellin, I don't think really affected my experience. But one thing that does help is my skin color. First of all, I think everyone who's watching this, a lot of you are brown or black. And unfortunately, but it works out as a traveler, people assume that we don't have a lot of money. So, I'm never walking around with like all my jewelry and stuff on, but, I don't think people would pick me out from a crowd and be like, ooh, that's the one, let's get her. She has all the money. So I think it helps me having brown skin, being black, especially in Colombia where there is a large Afro-Colombian population. I can just blend right in. So I do know that I only know of one black male who was robbed. Everyone else was like a white male, because they just completely stand out, and it's thought that they would have more money, more technology on them, so they stand out more as a target. But in Colombia, as a black woman, I don't think I stand out as a target. And as a woman, I wouldn't go to a lot of places on my own at night, but I don't think that danger increased or decreased because of my tourist status. Would I return to Colombia? Absolutely, I did. It was the first place that I lived abroad in 2018, and then I moved back in 2021, and I'm probably going back again. Like I think it's going to be my base and my long-term home, because it's just an amazing place. Like, yes, there are some dangers, but nothing compared to the dangers that I feel and know of in the United States. It's very affordable for now. It's moving up, but it's still very affordable. The climate is amazing. The people are beautiful inside and out. And finally, the type of expats that are moving are kind of more like me, like they're working remotely. It's not just like retirees. And hopefully the dating situation will improve, but we can talk about that on another video. But I feel like Medellin is my second home, and I can't wait to go back.
Hi, my name is Sydney Robertson, and I had the pleasure of living in the dangerous country, El Salvador, for 1 year, and I have visited more than 4 or possibly 5 times. Did anyone issue me cautionary warning before I went to El Salvador? Absolutely yes. Actually, my first time going to El Salvador was a study abroad trip, and it was in 2012, I believe. And we had to go to the International Center at the university and look at the danger level of the country that we were going to. And we were issued all of these warnings. And I think El Salvador was in the orange zone, which is obviously very close to red, meaning high or level 4 on the danger zone metric system. So yes, I was pre-warned about the potential political issues we could run into, militia on the street, consistent robberies, attacks, trafficking, things of that nature. So we were highly warned to keep all of our belongings close to our bodies or close to our person. We were advised not to wear clothing that was extremely distracting or would visibly catch the eye from a passerby that would attract them to you to make them want to take something from you, which I think is completely, it's a reasonable thing to do in any place that you travel, not necessarily just in El Salvador, but yes, I was told to take precaution against all of these things. So would I say that these warnings impacted my planning? The only way that it impacted my planning is I was intentional about the clothing choices that I wear, or I was intentional about not having my phone just out and about while walking around. But to be honest, these are things that you do when you're visiting any country. You can do that in the United States, traveling to New York and DC. You can do that when you're in Los Angeles. It's just a safe way of being to keep your personal belongings close to your being, and protected and hidden and concealed, especially if you're traveling solo. And if you look like someone who is not from that country and you stand out just based off of your presence alone, it could just be a wise idea to not have your high valuable goods flailing around in the air. So I did take precautions. It did not sway my opinion of the country at all, but the precautions that I took would be things that I would take in any country, not just El Salvador. Honestly, any city in the US as well if I'm traveling, especially solo. I did not encounter any safety issues while I was in El Salvador, either of the times that I was there. I was very heavily protected and well taken care of. I also spent a lot of times at university campuses and at factories in which I already knew the people there that I was going to see. So a lot of my excursions were either pre-planned, especially the first few trips that I took to El Salvador. We were at hotels that had conference rooms, and there were people from the embassy and the U.S. Trade Representative Office and things of that nature. So a lot of the spaces that I went to were very professional and therefore heavily protected. However, even when I was out on the street or getting food or going to a restaurant or even going to the beach, I did not experience any personal threats to my safety while I was there, and I had a wonderful time. Oh my gosh, the activities that I did while I was there. Well, let's just talk about this past year. In 2021, I learned how to swim, so I took a swimming class in El Salvador. I joined a belly dancing dance team, and I did that for an entire year, which was absolutely fabulous. I went surfing multiple times. There were lots of different factories that I got to go in and out of and visit, so that was amazing. I went to it looked like a little fair or kind of like a carnival situation, so that was fun. Went to a Buddhist temple and we did yoga, but spoken in Spanish. We got to go to a botanical garden. So I had lots of wonderful experiences. I made friends with a lot of the local people, and they taught me how to make tortillas y sopa de gallina. I never got to make pupusas, and I'm super sorry about that, but I did make enchiladas, pero Salvadorian enchiladas. They're completely different than Mexicano enchiladas. So super, super delicious things. Most of the things that I did were revolved around food. All of my activities are food related. But yes, I had a wonderful time, and I'm thinking, what else did we do? Oh, they have the zip line, the bicycle zip line, and the surfboard zip line. There is a labyrinth maze that is absolutely fantastic. And there are lots of little beach resorts where you can have the infinity pools and the massages on the beach, horseback riding on the beach. So you get your surf, you get your turf, you get your food, you get your culture. It's lots of fun. So I do believe that the thing that made the most difference in my time in El Salvador, specifically when it comes to safety, the better my language skills got and the more I learned my way around the area that I lived in, I felt a lot safer. So my language skills, as they increased, I was able to navigate with the rest of the world about where I needed to go and how I could get there most easily. When I became more familiar with the exact area that I lived in, it was a smaller town in El Salvador called Santa Ana. I became very familiar with the local restaurants, so I would frequent places consistently so that people knew my name and kind of expected me to come there. And I somewhat had a connection of people in my city circle that expected me to pass through at least once throughout the week. And if I didn't come through, I might have gotten a WhatsApp message like, hey, haven't seen you all, where you been, are you okay? So I started to build my community network, which also was an extension of my safety while I was there. So I think me being a tourist, an extended tourist since I was there for a year, was wonderful. But the longer I was there, the better my language skills got, the more familiar I became with the area, the more involved I got with the community. I felt a lot safer while I was there. But honestly, I never really felt unsafe. I guess I would just say I felt more comfortable. And would I return to El Salvador? Heck yeah, I'm planning a trip this year. It's like my second home now. I absolutely love it. I have friends there now. I have professional colleagues there now, and I'm hoping to continue to stay connected to the university, Catholic University of El Salvador, and I absolutely will be back to El Salvador probably for the rest of my life. So come visit me if you want to do a trip together.
So there you have it. First-hand experience from a variety of Black women travelers about their experience in countries that many people consider to be dangerous. If you are considering a move abroad, long-term travel, solo travel, and you need some help or some guidance, don't forget that I do offer one-on-one sessions, Ask Adelia sessions, where you can ask me your questions and I can share all of my experience and knowledge with you. There is a link for those below and here as well.